Welcome to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif on Rogers TV. Barrie, Mike,
Yes, sir.
this is an interesting topic that I want to get into, and I know we had some offline discussion, and we wanted to make
We
sure that
did.
we set the barometer accurately to make sure that we're conveying the message that we want to get out there. And to me, this week is all about getting beyond the headlines, getting beyond the latest thing that pops up under our screen and sort of sets the tone or our
Yeah.
bias. And I want to get back to some fundamentals. I don't want to get into COVID-19. I don't say we've exhausted that. We'll probably talk about it once more, but I want to get back into
Once or twice.
life 101. So
Yeah.
let's get right into it, Mike. There are some things that I would say I'm cautiously optimistic. At the same time, I'm also equally cautiously concerned about. And those are
hmm
some trends that I've been seeing in the marketplace for the last 6 months. They're human trends, they're market trends, they're economic trends, they're government trends. And
On
so
the buy side or the sell side of the market?
I would, well, yes, I would say it's influenced by both. So, Mike,
Okay.
what you've been guiding us for quite rightly is sort of where are the trends on housing prices, the market's hot, days on market, that kind of thing. Give us just a
Mhm.
quick summary of what you've seen for the last, call it over the summer, which is typically a quieter season.
Well, it hasn't been as quiet as is typical, but what is interesting, numbers for July are out, numbers for August are just out, and they've shown that the activity levels for both those months have been higher than usual. The number of trades, prices have continued to climb. The demand seems to be outstripping the supply, which is kind of driving the environment for the market this year. I've been watching for a home for a client for the past 2-3 weeks, and something came up on Tuesday, brand new listing. Tuesday afternoon, they called, wanted to book a showing for Wednesday. I called them Tuesday evening to learn that they received an offer right away and the place was sold the same day. So that's kind of the driver of this market. Is it a good time to buy? Yeah, but you got to be on your toes and you got to be ready to act fast if you are. And unfortunately, and this is something we're going to talk about here now, is that type of environment can encourage people to leap quickly without testing the water. And I'm going to just shift that back over to you because that's your department on finance and that. And tell us how and why people should be cautious. They should maybe step away, but they at least need to exercise caution in this type of market.
Yeah, Mike, thanks for that. I'm going to give you a very similar story that just happened in the last week and a half, and it tells you the part two to your story. Uh, Not always the case, right? I trust that the one that your client didn't get actually closed or
Mhm.
will close as planned. But here's the thing that happened for a client of mine in the last week and a half. They decided that they wanted to get into the market. They both had jobs. They both had good credit. They both had a down payment. It was fantastic. They came across a listing that was of interest to them. The price seemed fantastic.
Mhm.
They spoke with the realtor and they made an offer. They made an offer, though, approximately $50,000. I'm going to say close to $50,000, maybe a little bit less over asking price.
Right.
Sold, conditionally accepted on day one of the listing. Now,
Right.
what actually happened there? Well, as
You want
people
me to
might,
guess?
yeah, go ahead.
I would guess that once the adjusters looked at and they did the appraisal on the house, uh, the house itself couldn't justify the amount of money being asked for at that rate. So,
And that is why you're one of the most trusted names in real estate in Barrie. Mike, absolutely. The house did not appraise, plain and simple. It did not come in
mhm.
in value. Realtor's justification for guiding the clients to make the offer. Well, one thing we found out later, the realtor was double ending the deal, and that in
Mhm.
itself is no crime whatsoever. However, we also found out that the realtor said, oh, well, we listed it low because we were anticipating a bidding war.
Yeah.
What happened? There was no bidding. There were no multiple offers. There was no bidding war, and the house did not appraise, and the comps just didn't justify it. So
No.
this this deal so far has not happened. I'm not going to say it won't happen. I'm saying so far it hasn't happened, because that puts the buyer in a position where they've got to make up the net
Yeah.
difference.
And that would be my advice. If you want to get into a bidding war, if you want to bid 50,000 over on a house, that's fine. I don't advise it. But if you find yourself in that situation, you absolutely have to have that house. Be prepared to up your down payment by $50,000. And if you're not in a position to do that, then you might consider stepping away or continuing to look.
Yeah, well, Mike, what I want to do for the balance of the show is really talk about that. I mean, we've seen times, certainly in 2017, pre-COVID, I said the word, but pre-COVID, we saw a bidding war. We saw a bidding season where things were selling for 10%, 15%, whatever, over asking price, over list price. And we saw one of the greatest surges in value whatsoever. That, we didn't tank, we corrected, we absolutely corrected. However, saying, well, the value will catch up, or even if I pay 50,000 over asking, the value will catch up in the next year, 2, 3 years. That's great. That's still nonsense. That still doesn't make sense. You're still lighting a match under money. If you can find it, buy it at normal market rates.
Yeah.
Enjoy the $50,000 appreciation in your pocket over the last year or two. Don't have wasted that potential appreciation.
Yeah. And it's not across the board that we're seeing these bidding wars as we did. I think it was the beginning of 2017. It seemed every home that sold for over list in that short period. Right now, we're just seeing it, and more particularly, we're seeing it in cases where the agents and the vendors have created a scenario by underlisting the value of the property in order to artificially create engagement and the bidding wars.
So here, Mike, we're going to go to break, and when we come back, I said I wanted to talk about this show was certainly reading beyond the headlines, getting actually into the data, going back to basics and fundamentals. That's not boring. We're going to talk about why that's important. We're going to actually bring facts. We're going to actually bring in all the other outside elements that are telling us why this is the theme of today's show. And the theme of today's show, in a nutshell, on top of Beyond the Headlines, is stay within your means. Stay with us. We'll be right back on Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. And Mike, in the first segment, we're really teeing up the real theme for today's show. We're talking about the fact that, according to your data, according to the numbers that you've seen this continued trend towards what could appear to be a strong environment, a strong and healthy market with increasing numbers, et cetera. And that's great. That's wonderful. People are buying, people are selling. I want to throw a little bit of caution in there, and I want to get us back to some basics, but I want to tell you why. So leading up to this, I mean, I don't want to say I've been biting my tongue, but we've been hearing things recently, like the city of Barrie is enjoying the best unemployment numbers in the country right now, strongest in the market.
Right.
Housing prices are high. People, have managed with the CERB and other supplements. However, I want to look at some data, and that data, those ingredients are guiding me to say, folks, be careful.
Yep.
Live within your means. If you're going to buy. I want you to buy. I want you to buy your home. If you're renting and you can buy right now, absolutely do it. Let's look at some things here, Mike.
Well, before we do, just let me say it bears mentioning. Like you can look at those headlines again, and they'll tell you the numbers. Our show is supposed to be about getting behind those numbers and looking into the whys a little bit and what's causing those numbers. And something that's unique to Barrie, or unique to all communities, I suppose, within an hour or two of the GTA, is that's the elephant in the room. A lot of the activity that we're seeing here in Barrie is driven by out-of-town buyers who have a different scenario when they come into buy in Barrie. Most often, or more often than not, they're in a better financial position, especially if they're selling a Toronto home at today's Toronto prices and buying here for almost half the value, they've got that equity that they can play with, versus the local buyer here who may have a home to sell at Barrie prices and is buying in the same market. It's hard for them to compete. They're putting themselves in far more difficulty and far more precarious position if they're getting into a bidding war and going over by 50,000 than the person from Mississauga who just sold for 1.2 million and is now looking to buy at 600,000 in Barrie. So
Well,
that's the dynamic for our market here, and we're speaking to those Barrie residents with this message, I think, today, as opposed to that Mississauga buyer coming up here with his pockets full.
Mike, you ate the dessert before you ate the vegetables and the meat. That's what I wanted to build into that. And really what I'm looking at, so you're absolutely 100% correct, Mike. That is the guidance. That is what I want people to take away from this. But I really don't want to focus on the headlines. I really want to focus on, because we can say, well, listen, housing prices are high. Yes, they are.
Yeah.
That's relevant. That means nothing. Why? So let's get into this, Mike. We may
pour the gravy on.
We may have strong numbers right now.
Yeah,
absolutely. The latest indicator, courtesy of CTV News, whatever poll that they used, references the fact that we're within 1% of February's employment numbers. Question: for how long? Right? After 6 months, after what pain, after CERB, I don't care what anybody says, CERB was not income. CERB was income replacement, a subsidy, a form of government assistance, social assistance, welfare, call it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. And I don't have an opinion on it. The fact of the matter is CERB was received by people who did not have income coming in from their normal employment means, self-employed or employment means. And so that is the important takeaway, because that in itself is not sustainable. And Mike, you'll argue later on, I think quite rightly, that the current trend of capitalism is not necessarily sustainable. I don't want to get into that just yet. What's another thing that we can talk about, though? The high prices. Mike, you touched on it. Absolutely. The high prices in our region are not because the value of our homes went up internally through normal protocol and through normal transaction and normal trends. They went up because of a very strong, more recent influence from the GTA. And that's what's put weight on it. And so buyers out of Milton or Hamilton or Toronto or York region can absolutely buy at those rates, and they can call it a discount. We can't area here.
No, but and the nice thing about real estate is, there's always that balance, though. That creates a challenge for buyers, local buyers getting in. It creates a windfall for them when they get out later on, because those values are pushed up. Once you own, then you're golden, and bring it on, bring all the buyers from everywhere, drive those prices up. Everybody wants to see the value of their investment go up. But it's a cat and mouse game between buyers and sellers. You want to have a healthy real estate economy. It can't be too one-sided or the other. There has to be balance.
Yeah, and I think, as rightly is pointed out to me in my ear, it's not a liquid asset. You got to pay it down.
No.
You still have to be able to pay for it. But here's what's interesting, though, and here's what I think not everybody realizes. You talk about having cake and eating it too. And that's not normal. And I don't really know where that came from, but someone will do the homework and maybe tell me about it later. But here's the thing. We've got record prices for homes right now, and we've got near record, if not record low interest rates right now.
Yeah.
To the average person.
And that's across the country that's being seen.
Yeah. But to anybody looking at that at face value, that's like, wow, I've got a unicorn in my hand. I've hit the jackpot. This is fantastic. Let's make this happen. Wrong. We got to look at why that's the case. And the case is that for people who are currently living in this region here, those record prices of homes, that's unsustainable. That might be out of reach. But why is the government, and why are the banks, and why are the economists, and why are the people who are setting the interest rates keeping us and predicting 4 more years of record low rates? It's because they're concerned as well. It's because they don't believe that we're actually going to be able to make it
Mm.
and continue this as a sustainable trend.
Yeah.
So my encouragement to people is, if you want to buy or if you want to get out of renting, and if you think that I can afford to own for the same amount that I'm paying in rent, if not even less, and depending if you're moving from outside the region and into the region,
Yeah.
great. What I'm encouraging you to do is speak to somebody on your financial team, speak to a realtor, speak to a
Yeah.
mortgage agent, speak to an accountant, speak to a financial planner. I'm going to throw a whole bunch of us under the bus right now. I'm going to say, make sure you know what the motivation is of the person who's giving you the guidance. Every
Yeah.
realtor wants to sell houses for more money because we earn more commission. Every broker wants to sell, or agent wants to sell a higher mortgage amount because we make more commission. That's irrelevant.
Well, in theory, and from the outside, one would presume that. But me as a realtor, I don't want to be working with someone who I know is beyond their means and that I'm likely to be visiting in the next 6 months to a year because it's all fallen apart and now their house is going power sale. That's not
Great
good
advice.
for
Gotta go
business. If I
break.
want to look at that
Ben,
totally selfishly, it's just not good for business because they're going to talk me down. I should have been giving them guidance and I didn't. So I
and
want
we went
people to
over
be
break, Mike.
comfortable.
We went
Yep.
over break. That was not an attack at you. That's a reality of the marketplace. We're going to go to break, and when we come back, let's talk about it. Stick with us on Hitting Home with Mike and Arif.
Welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. And Arif, you've touched on some good points here. Obviously, you're seeing this in your day to day, and some of these cautions that you want to share. I want you to delve a little deeper into that. What brought you to this, and just a little bit of advice. Maybe we can wrap up this segment with for those people who are looking to buy.
Sure, Mike, and thanks for that. Obviously, I can touch a nerve with anybody, and if I was watching that, it doesn't sound like roses and sunshine and stuff. And the fact is, I'm concerned. I'm concerned for a few reasons, and that is because I'm always cautious about, we get on a topic, we get on a headline, we beat it to death for maybe a few days on social media or even a couple of weeks, but then we forget about it, and
Yeah.
headlines switch from time to time, and that's great. But what has never lied, what has never failed, is we have to look at data and we have to look at trends, and you can't have a trend with one dot on a graph. You got to have a series of dots on the graph.
Yeah.
Here's the fact: with record low interest rates and record high prices, and the fact that a huge percentage of the population was collecting some form of a social assistance benefit or a CERB, an income replacement benefit, these are all facts, and it's unsustainable, right? You can't put those ingredients into making something beautiful. It will not happen. It's a
How do you
rocky.
see that manifesting itself?
Well, here's what I see, Mike. I see that people have an opportunity right now to, if we choose to live within our means, and if we choose to make sure that we continue to see the trend or the pattern, do I still have my job, or is my business still a viable entity in a year from now, now that I've gone at least a full year, if not more, through this
Yeah.
post-COVID or post-pandemic reality? Now I have some trends to work with. I can't look at the income I made in record income I made in 2018 and 19, ignore the fact that I had zero income in 2020, and buy the best priced house because everybody's buying at low interest rates. That's insane. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But what I could do instead is say, hey, listen, I was quite happy where I was living before. Sure, I had wants and dreams. Yes, I would like a little bit more of this or that, whether that's a renovation, a new pool, or whatever it may be. And I can enjoy the benefit of increased theoretical assessment value of my home and low rates, but still live within my means and know that my family's going to be safe for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years. It's not about doomsday.
No.
It's about sense.
And taking a more modest approach to it all is what I take from that. And at the end of it all, whether it's everybody has to have a roof over their head. So you're either paying your own mortgage, I always say, or you're paying your landlord's mortgage. I always think over the long term, you're better off if you're paying down your own mortgage on an asset that's appreciating over time. Um, the message here is not to not get involved in real estate, is to tread cautiously, know where you stand, know what your buffer zone is, prepare for worst case scenarios. If we get a second wave of COVID and you're buying a house today, is your job protected? If you are going to be out of work for a while, are you going to have the means to cover yourself as you go forward? These are all just good common sense advice that we should be giving to people and that people should be taking heed of if they're stepping out there to buy a home.
Well, yeah, Mike, absolutely. And here's my thought. Back in 2016, there were literally people, because of false information that our federal government and anybody else who jumped in decided to jump on, saying, the foreign investor is going to buy up all the homes. There are going to be no homes for sale, and therefore prices went through the roof. That literally happened. People lost their minds. 6 months later, a year later, all of a sudden that was proved to be false. The same thing.
Step back, talk to a professional.
The same advice applies. Step back, take a breath. Don't make a rush decision right now. If you weren't going to be making a move, an extreme move, I should say, prior to 6 months ago, don't make an extreme move today. Slow, cautious, incremental steps. What is the strategy that you want to know? You've got to know that you still have to qualify. You have to know that, yes, you have to have good credit. If you were on CERB, your options are different. Okay, they are different because many of the normal top level institutional lenders are not counting CERB.
And you and I have both seen that in our work. We've both seen that happening where people have been on the CERB and how it's impacted on their ability to qualify for financing.
Absolutely. Here's the other thing I would say to somebody. While everybody else, whomever that may be jumping on this train or this bandwagon, whatever you want to call it, to go buy something at ridiculously high prices because they think if they don't buy now, it's never going to happen again. Wait, because the other side of the equation is that if a second wave comes in, I'm not saying it will, although if you look at the numbers out there with after school openings and things like that, there are states and provinces and countries where second waves have already started to hit. That could be devastating. That will force some people who overextended themselves to have to power sale or lose their homes or get out, whatever you want to call it. It's not happy about it.
I'm not certain we're going to see that. I'm not certain we're going to see that at a level, though, that is going to influence average house prices in our community, at least. The supply and demand ratio has been pretty consistent over the past few years. And if anything, that demand, I think as those economic impacts hit, more and more people want to leave the GTA and buy more affordable homes.
I agree.
And that's the artificial or the outside influencer.
We got to go. But here's the fact, Mike, we've been saying that for the last couple of minutes. You're absolutely right. No matter what happens locally or everywhere else around the country, we are influenced by the third largest city in North America. We are influenced, even if it's a trickle amount or a small percentage, we're still influenced here in Barrie by those. So absolutely, we will still continue to see demand. Mike, we got to go. The punchline for this is, the wrap up for this is, look beyond the headlines, get good advice, speak with a professional, calm down, make solid decisions. And
I agree all around. Great show. So join us next week on Hitting Home with Mike and Arif.